Good evening, everybody. Welcome to First Church of Religious Science here in New York. Welcome to our spiritual gathering, our Zoom call, and a special shout out to everybody who's watching us also later in the day on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Insta, and X. I think I have them all. It's wonderful to have you all here on the call. This is our Thursday evening self-healing class based upon the book You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. This church is where Louise Hay herself was a practitioner. This is where she studied her science of mind, took her classes. This is where she learned her practice. And we continue with her work week after week, every Thursday evening at 7. We also meet Wednesday evenings at 7 for our creative living class, which is hosted by James, and every Sunday morning at 10:45. Tonight's lesson is about an important topic. We visit it in different ways throughout the year. It's overcoming self-criticism and judgment. This is one of the earlier Louise Hay classes. And I have a little piece I want to read to you before we go into the class itself. And it's entitled, The Futility of Criticism. Yes, the futility of criticism. So before we get into the class, let's take a moment to reflect on the futility of criticism in all of its forms. Criticism of the self, criticism of others, the world, criticism, and everything in between is like trying to sculpt a masterpiece out of thin air. It's an exercise in futility that leads us nowhere. And it only clouds our perception of the perfection that exists in every single moment. Imagine, if you will, for a moment, that you're an artist, a wonderful artist, and the universe is giving you a beautiful canvas to paint your life upon. Each and every stroke you make is an expression of your inner self, and every color you choose represents a different aspect of your being. Now, picture yourself standing in front of the canvas with a magnifying glass, scrutinizing every little detail and finding fault in every brushstroke that you've made. Instead of appreciating the evolving masterpiece, you're struck in the cycle of critique and dissatisfaction. Louise Hay, a pioneer in the field of self-healing, often reminded us that the point of power is always in the present moment. When we criticize ourselves, we are essentially negating our power to create positively in the now. Again, when we criticize ourselves, we're negating our power to create positively in the now. We are, in essence, telling ourselves that we're not good enough, we're not worthy enough, not perfect enough, but in reality, we are perfect as we are. Each moment is a divine expression of life's unfolding beauty. That's true wherever you see it. It's true in this new moment. Criticism of others is no different. When we judge and find fault in those around us, we're merely projecting our own insecurities and our fears. It's like holding up a mirror to our own soul and saying, I see you, but I don't accept you. Instead, religious science teaches us to see the divinity in everyone, to recognize that each and every person is a unique expression of the infinite, an individualization of spirit. When we shift our perspective from criticism to appreciation, we open our hearts to love and understanding. And what about criticizing the world? You know, we turn on the news and everything we hear. What about criticizing the world? The world is a reflection of our collective consciousness. When we focus on what's wrong, we perpetuate a cycle of negativity. But when we choose consciously to see the good, to acknowledge that everything is unfolding in divine order, we contribute to the collective upliftment. As Ernest Holmes so beautifully said, life is a mirror and will reflect back to the thinker what he or she thinks into it. So, let's embrace the idea that criticism in any form is a futile exercise. It's like trying to scoop water with a sieve. No matter how hard we try, it's always going to slip through our fingers. Instead, let's choose to see the perfection in every single moment, in every single person, and in ourselves, most of all, because that's the person we work on in this class every week. There's nobody nicer to be nicer than you being nice to you. So let's remember that we're always in the perfect place at the perfect time, learning the perfect lessons. And with this understanding, let's move with a heart full of gratitude and a mind open to endless possibilities of love and growth. In this big, grand scheme of things called life, this masterpiece of life, everything that we experience is essential. We want to begin this evening with a little centering exercise. If you want to close your eyes for just a moment, or just take a moment to take a breath. Let's breathe in life, invigorating life. Let's enter into this short meditative moment inspired by Louise Hay. Sitting comfortably, taking again a breath or two. Feel the air filling your lungs, in and out as you gently release each breath. Imagine yourself, if you would, diving deep within to the center of your being. There, you'll discover an infinite well of love. Visualize this well as radiant, golden light, warming you from within and expanding outward, encompassing your entire body. Feel this love flow through you, dissolving any tension, self-criticism, or judgment. Repeat silently, I am worthy of love and acceptance. Again, yes, I am worthy of love and acceptance. Now let's delve into our topic of the evening, which is overcoming self-criticism and judgment. Here's an old saying: don't criticize what you don't understand. Don't criticize what you don't understand, and you've never walked in that person's shoes. That reminds me of it's an American Indian saying, which is very similar. Don't criticize that person. You haven't walked in his moccasins. Criticism, especially self-criticism, can be incredibly damaging. It starts when we're younger. It's from patterns that we learned, and we sometimes carry it throughout our entire lives, and it's really too bad if that's what is going on. But this class, if you're here, chances are you've already come to realize that your life is a reflection of your dialogue. So if you're in a class like this, it would suggest you're already on your way to stepping out of these patterns. But criticism damages, sabotages our self-esteem and our well-being. Carlos Zafran eloquently said, the words in which a child's heart is poisoned, whether through malice or through ignorance, remain branded in their memory, and sooner or later they burn his or her soul. So Zafran is eloquently saying that as children, a child's heart can be poisoned through ignorance or malice. It doesn't have to be intentional, because these words are like weapons. And so sooner or later, they burn the soul. So let's once again reflect, if you can, go back a little bit in your memory on the programming that you received when you were younger and how it influenced your current life, your current behavior. It could be about anything: programming about love, programming about friendships, about community, about relationships, about men, about women, about the way people spoke to one another. If you think of your family, whatever your family was, what was the family pattern regarding this subject of criticism? Were you raised in a family where there was a lot of critical commentary going on? As you think back, was the atmosphere loving? Was it really supportive? Was it fun? Was it joyful? Or was it judgmental? Was it critical? If anything comes up in your memory, just make a note of it. As you think about your parents or grandparents or whoever your caregivers were they generally optimistic? Do you remember them being cheerful and encouraging? Or do you remember them another way? Do you identify any patterns of critical behavior that you picked up from your family? Is there some pattern that you know that you carry forward even now? Louise was often times quoted as saying, a child is the most wonderful thing in the world because they're full of joy and they come into this world without any kind of prejudice. They're just like a being of light and wonder. And they, of course, get programmed very quickly, but they're open. They're open to life and they're absolutely full of wonder. Louise went on to say, criticism is learned. It's absorbed from the atmosphere of our early years. A child doesn't come in that way. So we pick up the attitudes and beliefs of those around us, often without realizing it. And it doesn't even mean that what happened in that early setting was intentional. I don't believe anyone's intending to be destructive to their children, but nonetheless, a child picks up a lot of information. They hear, they listen. So for this evening, a quote that comes through the lesson time and time again is, don't criticize what you can't understand. So much conflict comes through misunderstanding. And I've thought about that over the years. There's a standard line that sometimes therapists will use, which is there must be a misunderstanding. When there's a conflict, there's always some kind of a misunderstanding because the person who's most upset is not really fully appreciating what's going on. If you're coming at things from a metaphysical point of view, you understand that everyone is doing the best they can with the information, the understanding and the awareness that they have. So there's obviously a misunderstanding when there's conflict. It's one person not understanding another and judging another. So we don't want to criticize people when we can't fully understand them. It's really almost impossible to totally understand what another person is going through. We think we can, but we really cannot. So much conflict comes through misunderstanding, through our judgments. And that, again, is tied back to that past programming. And maybe you can't remember all of it, but usually as you observe yourself, the way you act yourself, you'll hear your own family. You'll hear some of the stuff you were raised with, and you might say, oh my goodness, I'm doing the same thing that my mother or my father or my grandmother used to do. So what we do in these classes is we want to become mindful of our inner dialogue. You'll hear me most weeks ask the question, what has it been like being you this week? And I'm only asking it because I'm wanting everyone to start paying attention to what it is that they're actually saying, the way they're talking. And because you'll see it, you'll catch yourself in action. If you use the word should, for example, all the time or often, you know that Louise hated that word, right? She thought that it was the most damaging word in the English language. And she felt that way because most often when it's used, it's a critical word. In use, it usually boils down to, I'm not good enough, you're not good enough, something's not good enough. It's a rigid word. It's a critical word. It's very seldom used in a good way. So Louise was wanting us to pay attention to that word in particular and all of its synonyms. And we want to examine that dialogue again because that inner dialogue often mirrors the criticisms that we received as children. So ask yourself this evening, do I often find myself saying I should have done better? I wish I had done better. I didn't do well enough. I blew it, or I'm not good enough. I just can't do it. I'm not good enough. I'm not this. I'm not that. I'm not attractive enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm too this. I'm too that. I'm too fat. I'm too thin. Whatever it is. Do you criticize your appearance? You look at yourself in the mirror and, just like in shock? Or if so, you're definitely in the right class, because what we're here to do is to just help you turn all that around Do you criticize yourself, again, for the way you look, for your intelligence, for your capabilities, for what you've done, for what you've not done? I'm reminded of Dale Carnegie. There's a quote. He said, "Any fool can criticize, complain, and most fools do." He said, but it takes character and self-control to be understanding and be forgiving. I thought that was great. I'll say it again. Any fool can criticize, complain, and most fools do. Dale Carnegie. But it takes character and self-control to be understanding and forgiving. So we want to shift from self-criticism to self-compassion. We want to extend the love that we are learning to have for ourselves to other people. And we really can't be loving other people unless we love ourselves first. So we have a checklist for you of criticism and judgment. I haven't seen this in many months. Some of you may have heard it once before. So reflect on these common critical thoughts just to see if any of it is still within you. Do you say, have you said, people just can't get along? Or why can't people get along? Or maybe, why are people so rude? So we're just checking out if you're critical or judgmental. Why are there so many bad drivers? Why am I so naive? Why am I so stupid? And why is everybody so ignorant? Or maybe you should say, I would do that if I were younger. I would do that if I weren't so heavy or so fat. And then you're looking at clothes. Maybe someone's wearing something you don't like. And you might say, well, those are really ugly clothes. They're awful. Or you're looking at another person and you just think they're not doing well. And you'll say, they're never going to be able to finish that job. Or you'll say about yourself, I'm such a klutz. I just can't do anything right. Or you're judgmental another way. You'll say that people around here are disgusting. They're slobs. Or my neighbors are just awful. They're so rude. They're so noisy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now you notice if any of this is coming up. Just notice. Here's another one. Nobody asked me what I think. Nobody cares about what I think. Nobody cares. No one cares. Poor me. You know, that's some version. Poor me, and ain't it awful? So if you have that going on, that's more judgment. More. Here's another one. Can you believe that old car she drives? Can you believe that she's still driving? I hate his laugh. I hate her laugh. Those people are lazy. They should do this or they should do that. Or on your appearance, I hate being so short. I hate being so fat. Regarding your family or friends, they aren't too smart. Then here you are in a restaurant. The food here is lousy. The food isn't good. You're looking at other people and children of God, one and all, and you're saying, these people are really weird. Those foreigners are weird. This music sounds awful. How can this person wear these ugly shoes? Then there's people who have beliefs about men and women. Here's one. All men are selfish. Men don't care. Women are catty. Look at that broken down car, house, whatever it is. So there's another 20 or 30 of these. I spare you them. So the question is, does your inner dialogue sound like any of this? Do you have this negative thing going like, I'm just not smarter, I can't do this, I never complete, I always fail, I'm not good in relationships, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at that? If any of that's going on, all I can say is just stop. Take a time out. If you notice you're doing this, it's just like you got to find a way to rein it all in. Ernest Holmes was talking about your executive power. We teach executive power to children in religious science through a program called Quick Starter. We used to. And so you envision the stagecoach that I talk about a lot. And that's our comfort zone. It's where we live. It's where we're comfortable. And then there's a team of wild stallions out ahead of the stagecoach, which represents the power. Well, in this teaching, there's an invitation to get out of that comfort zone of all this habitual critical thinking and to get out up on the platform and take the reins. And Holmes would say there's power for good in the universe, greater than you, of which you're a part, and you can use it. So what we're wanting to do in religious science, we teach it to the kids as well, is to learn to change our thinking. All that stuff, that whole bunch of stuff that has been with us, and I'm sure many of us have cleaned up a lot of it, but the thing is, there's still things, there's habitual thinking in all of us. And what we want to do is we want to cancel it, we want to negate it, we want to neutralize it, we want to replace it, and simply want to stop. Stop in the name of love. Stop, stop, stop. We want to turn the lesser ideas that we have around into greater ideas, into ideas that are really worthy of us. Because if you're sitting there and you're doing this all day long, sure, none of us know. Doesn't matter. It's none of our business. But the thing is, if there's a lot of that negativity going on all the time, it's not helping you. It's being reflected in your life, right? So we want to get a handle on it. I play with words. Stop in the name of love. That was from Diana Ross's Supremes. Whenever you find yourself going there, you just find a way. Stop. You make a game of it with yourself. There you go again. Stop, and gently and lovingly turn it around. Louise would say, don't make this another way to criticize yourself. Some people say, if you really knew me, you wouldn't want to be around me, because they think that they're the only one that has all this type of thinking, what we can call stinking thinking. It's pretty common to have a whole bunch of stuff like this going on within. But here's the thing, we're meant to have a bigger life, a greater life. We'd like to think that we could harness this and release this and neutralize these types of thoughts, these types of critical thoughts. They don't bring you anything that you ever want. We know that often when people criticize others, it just reveals something about themselves more than the person they're criticizing. The thing about judgments or about being critical, usually it's something that's habitual. We don't mean to do it, but we just do it. We've been doing it. And it might have been a pattern we picked up from our families. And it's not always easy to break a pattern like that. But the thing is, you definitely can break it if you really want to do it, if you want to break it. There's a 12-step slogan which says, willingness is the key. And see, that's such an important idea. You can transform your past. You can be about your Father's business. You can live a spiritual life. You can live the affirmative life that we talk about. You can transcend. You can really ascend to a much higher expression of life. But you have to want to. It's not going to happen accidentally. If you have a bunch of these negative patterns going on within you, you begin working at them, one thought at a time, one day at a time. So we reflect on our childhood a little bit. Let's for a moment again. Were you criticized quite often as a child? That's either a yes or a no. Just anything that comes to mind. Where did you learn to criticize yourself? Where did you learn to be critical of others? Can you remember? Was it a parent, a grandparent, maybe an aunt, older brother, sister? This kind of early programming shapes our self-talk and our perception of others. I remember when I was getting ready to become a minister and I was presenting the Louise Hay materials in the mid to late 80s. A great friend of mine was a Dr. Cameron, who was a Unity minister. And we had a lot in common. And he shared a profound thing with me one day. He told me that he loved working with people and he was studying psychology and he got a master's in abnormal psychology. And he was on his way to get a doctorate. And then he shared with me one day, he said, but he discovered that he had the whole approach wrong. He said, I was really good at seeing what was wrong with people. He says, I was so good at diagnosing people's, all their flaws. And he says, I got hit with blinding light, like Paul on the road to Damascus one day. And I thought, my God, I don't want to spend my life seeing what's wrong with people, assessing their problem areas. He wanted to live the life as a minister, a New Thought minister, where he could see the good and what's good with people and about people. So that ended his career as being a psychologist. because he wanted to put his focus in a different place. Those of us who are in religious science, we do a very similar thing. We're here to see the good, the good in everyone and ourselves, and we do it 24/7. Well, people will say, well, that seems to be a Pollyanna type of approach, get real. I've had students over the years say, get real, Greg. And I've watched those very students self-destruct. So people who are in what we'll call this transcendental movement, which is New Thought, going right back to Emerson and others, we're aware of the problems, I promise you. But we're here to focus on the truth. We're here to know that everyone here is a spiritual being, and everyone here is evolving, and everyone here is doing the best that they can. You've always done the best you could. And you might argue, oh, no, I haven't. I made some awful mistakes. I'll say, yeah, you probably have. We all have, but we've done the best we could, at that given moment in time. And we've all grown. But here's the thing about life. Life is evolving. People are evolving everywhere. Every person is everywhere. A person who's living this kind of life, which I would suggest you're beginning to take a little bit of a mystical approach to God, is you're learning to see the perfection in life, and you know that it's unfolding in everyone and everywhere. So with Reverend Cameron, my good friend, he chose to build upon the good, and he built a congregation. He taught people to see the good, to see the spiritual reality of everything, and he was very successful in helping people. And we carry on. He's one of my teachers, and I carry on with his message. His story reminds me of the importance of focusing on strengths rather than weaknesses. There's a quick self-assessment I have for us tonight. I want you to think of at least 2 things that you criticize yourself about. 2 things that you might want to let go of. Do you criticize your looks? Do you criticize the way you act? Do you criticize the way you interact? Criticize things you've done? Are you having a problem letting go of something? Are you feeling guilty about? Whatever it is, think of 1 or 2 things that you're judgmental or you're critical about yourself about. When did you first notice this? Or have you noticed that you just haven't dealt with it? How have you reinforced it over the years? And what's that doing? Is it making you feel worse? Isn't it amazing, Louise Hay said, how long we've been picking on ourselves for oftentimes the same thing. Here's the point. No matter what it is, criticism doesn't produce positive changes. It's only going to make you feel bad. Again, criticism doesn't produce positive changes. It only makes you feel bad. Living the affirmative life, which we talk about every week, is what we teach. Ernest Holmes challenged us to find one person who's for something and against nothing. And he says, that person's going to be the redeemer of my soul. Someone who lives the affirmative life, who's rooted and committed to seeing the good, to knowing that every encounter is a holy encounter, to knowing that all is well, to loving life, as Louise Hay would say. Find me one person, and Holmes said such a person is redeemed from the bondage of self because they're living in positive expectancy and they're free from judgment and struggle. Don't be distracted by criticism. Benjamin Disraeli said, how much easier is it to be critical than to be correct? So being correct, by the way, is realizing that you are an individualization of God life yourself, and realizing that every person you meet is as well. So it's easy to be critical, much easier than being correct. Being correct suggests that you live, move, and have your being, knowing that you're one with Spirit, and so is everyone else. So, what's to criticize if you have spiritual understanding? It's a big question. If you know who you are, an individualization of God life, what's to criticize? If you have that understanding. If you have that understanding, you're not going to be criticizing other people either. Instead of criticism, let's strive for understanding. Replace judgment with empathy. Yeah, we can't judge their path, so let's replace that judgment with empathy. Let's replace condemnation with compassion. Criticism of others is thus an oblique form of self-condemnation. When we criticize ourselves, it often reveals something about our own inner self, our struggles, and our insecurities. This particular quote suggests the act of criticizing others is indirectly a way of condemning ourselves. It means that when we judge or criticize someone else, we might actually be projecting our own faults, our fears, or our negative traits on them. In other words, the things we criticize in others are often just reflections of what we dislike or we're dissatisfied with in ourselves. For example, we might be criticizing people for not doing enough or for being lazy, and this might be because we fear that we are ourselves not working hard enough. It's a projection. By recognizing this, we can begin to understand that our criticism of others are really a form of self-criticism, and that by addressing our own insecurities and loving ourselves more, that'll help us become more compassionate and less judgmental. I have a couple affirmations for you, for those of you who are doing mirror work that I put together for this lesson. So here's a couple you can practice with to reinforce your positive self-messaging. You can look in the mirror, you can say, I love you, and know that you are doing the best you can. Now you can say that to yourself. You can say, I love you, and I know that I'm doing the best that I can. You can also look directly in the mirror, I'm looking at one now, where you can say, I love you, and know that you are doing the best that you can. Another message. You are perfect, just the way you are. Again, you are perfect, just the way you are. Do that with a mirror for a while and see what comes up for you. Or you could wake up in the morning, or you go by the mirror in the hall or the bathroom. You become more wonderful every single day. You could say that to yourself. Watch yourself smile. Or watch yourself, oh my God. But whatever it is, it's going to be good because it's something for you to either appreciate or something to work on. Another one is, I approve of you. I approve of you. Can you say that to yourself as you look in the mirror? I approve of you. Let's see if we can find a better way to do this. That's a good way to talk to yourself. Rather than being critical, you could say to yourself, in the mirror, let's see, this is you and I in the mirror. Let's see if we can find a better way to do this rather than being critical of ourselves. In the mirror again, growing and changing is fun and we can do it together. So that's an example of someone treating themselves like they are, important. That's you and you with the mirror. A little more, criticism versus understanding. Often our criticism of others reflects our own insecurities. I said that before. Often those that criticize others reveal what they lack. Think about the times that you've been most critical of others. Were you projecting your own fears and shortcomings onto them? Maybe, you might have been. When we judge and criticize another person, it merely says something about our own need to be critical. What if we replace criticism with understanding? In order for a child or an adult to grow and blossom, all they really need is love, acceptance, and praise. So we're here to be lifters. We're not here to be critical. I was told years ago that we are the cheerleaders. People in this teaching are the cheerleaders of life. We're here to say, great, good, great, good. We're not here to criticize the soul. So for a child, in order for a child, we can think of ourselves, we're an adult to grow and blossom. All we really need is love, acceptance, and praise. And sometimes it's self-acceptance, praise. We can be shown a better way to do things without making the way we do it wrong. The child inside of you still needs a certain amount of love and approval. It's much more valuable to look for strength in others. You can gain absolutely nothing by criticizing their imperfections. Louise taught us that by loving ourselves more and more, we will definitely transform our life. So let's turn our self-criticism into self-love. Let that be the goal for this evening. Wherever you spot it, wherever you're being critical, stop and turn that into self-love. reframe it, say it in another way. Find a way to approve of yourself. Every time you catch yourself being critical, what you're going to do? Stop. Replace it with a loving thought. For example, instead of thinking, I am so dumb, stop, and lovingly say, I'm learning and growing every day. Instead of thinking, I hate my body, think, my body is beautiful and does amazing things for me. And I will remind you now with a famous saying from Anonymous, having a sharp tongue will cut your throat. So that's from Anonymous. So let's wind this lesson down with some of Louise's PowerPoints. She said, we're each responsible for our experiences. I'm sure you all know that. You hear me say it every week. Every thought we think is creating our future. Everyone is dealing with old patterns. We're always dealing with old patterns, and we're always releasing old patterns and replacing them. Patterns of resentment, guilt, criticism, self-hatred. Today in this class, I want you all to, in your own mind, say, I release them, every last one of them, and I know that all is well. These are only thoughts, and thoughts can be changed. We can release our past, we can release all the stories, and we can forgive everyone, including, and most importantly, ourselves. Self-approval and self-acceptance in the now are the keys to all positive changes. That means right here, now, today, right now. Self-acceptance and self-approval are the keys to all positive changes. And the point of power is always going to be here and now. So release it all right now and proclaim, I'm whole, I'm complete, I'm an inlet and outlet of God activity. Here's an affirmative prayer for us to close. I'll do it in the first person for us to wrap up today's wonderful gathering, and there's going to be plenty of time for everyone to share. I invite you to join with me in consciousness. I'll say it in the first person. I recognize the presence of Spirit within and around me. I'm one with Spirit. I'm one with infinite love and wisdom. In this moment of awakening to my true self, I feel the energy coming through me, the energy of life flowing through me and around me, connecting me to all of you, to the universe itself. I acknowledge my unity with this divine presence. I'm connected to the source of all good. As I awaken to myself, to my true self, I embrace the power, the creativity, and the love that embrace my divine heritage. I affirm the truth of my being. I'm powerful. I'm loving. Every single fiber of my being resonates with the joy of Spirit. I'm a radiant expression of Spirit, shining brightly in all that I do. I express gratitude now for the realization and for the blessings that are in my life. I release the need for doubt, fear, trusting that my affirmation is already answered. I let go and I let Spirit guide me. So let's close together, taking these words into heart and allowing this prayer to resonate deeply within us all. I now invite you all to start to get ready to share what it's been like being you. Everybody has a couple minutes in our Zoom gathering. Share your demonstrations, share what you want to release. Thank you all for being part of this incredible journey that we're sharing in together and bringing your light to our community. And so it is.